It's so lovely to be here so early in the morning. Monday morning. I've already seen the beach, which is so nice.
Oh,
yeah. Went for a walk along the beach this morning, which was nice.
How beautiful.
Do that more. It's been raining a fair bit here, so it's been hard to get my head around going because you wake up and it's raining and so
it does make such a difference though when you get out and start your day like that. It really does feel so different.
Yeah. And especially for me at the moment because I'm living in New South Wales and I've moved away from everyone. So I've moved away from if I'd moved back up to Queensland, I'd be okay because I'd be with all my clan. But I've moved away, and so that I'm accessible to family, but not accessible to family. And because of the restrictions, it's made it even harder. So I'm pretty much alone all the time. So it's been a little bit tough the last week actually. So
with everyone visiting, you really notice that difference from that combined energy and then back to your energy. I used to live by myself for a number of years as well, and I always used to find that it just took that little bit of time for my energy to reclaim the space.
Yeah. And I'm a real introvert, so I love it by myself. However, it's just been a little bit too much, and it's been a while. I did have the kids over last weekend, but something, I've just done a recode, so I'm feeling a lot better. So, good morning, Helen. We've got Helen saying hello this morning. I don't know who else is on here. We've got a few people. So today we're going to be talking about beyond the five senses, which is exciting because we've been sort of covering bits anyway. So who wants to start?
I think Asha should start.
Okay, no worries.
I nominate her.
Being an introvert as well, I always do struggle to go first, but that's all right. I'm happy to lead the way today. So I guess for me, beyond the five senses really starts to tap into this concept about the great human illusion, really, in that we're born into this world and we make sense of it through our five senses. And what's never really discussed is that those five senses are essentially like a sieve of how we perceive reality. So we're only ever seeing or perceiving rather a snippet of what's going on. And then based on what meaning we assign to those snippets, that then forms our perception. And we assume that that is reality. And so where we kind of get into the beyond the five senses is, concepts that are spoken of, but are perhaps less tangible. And so then they tend to get put into the spiritual or woo-woo, or not actually being able to be rigorously studied. And so then people move away from it out of fear. And it also can activate this sense of, well, they're doing something and yet I'm not. And it can kind of trigger an inferiority complex, which further moves people away. So for me, beyond the five senses is all about intuition, and actually gets back to the real fabric of reality, which is the infinite intelligence itself, and kind of this concept of the universe actually being one mind that we're all a part of. And it's just about awareness as to what we're tapped into or not. But that actually means reducing the emphasis of the five senses. So suspending all of that, I guess.
Absolutely. And one of the things about this particular time-space reality is that science is starting to catch up, right? So, for example, study of epigenetics, where they're discovering that emotions are being locked into our DNA from, you know, a lineage, you know, an aspect of our lineage, and that, you know, law of attraction, that particles of our thoughts attract other particles within the vibration of the fabric. So all of that, you know, it's all alluding to the fact that we're all making it up, right? It's all we're making it up, and it's all as you were saying, you know, like this filtering process that we, you know, we see, we hear, we touch, you know, we experience, we taste, so we think it's real because it seems to be a physical experience that we're having, and yet it's a filtering process that we've put through our you know, amygdala, all these different aspects of ourselves, and make chemical functions within our system, and then make a perceived awareness, you know, and a definition of what that is. And then next thing, we've labeled something, right? You know, this taste is sweet. this you know, is red, or this sound is angelic, and, you know, like, so all of these things that we start creating and labeling so that we can function in the world. And we've sort of created ourselves over generational history to think that that's the only way. I can feel that you want to talk, Nicolette. I just remembered something as well from way back when I was listening. I used to get into the Mayan calendar. And I don't know if you ladies or the people that are watching, the women that are watching, know this, but when we moved, you know, when the Mayans and, you know, a lot of the indigenous cultures were taken over by, you know, white, you know, religious doctrination, the Mayan calendar is actually measures consciousness, whereas we went into the Gregorian calendar, right? And so that measures time and space. So all of a sudden, everything was gone from, you know, fifth, sixth dimension. All of a sudden, we're measuring the dimension. And so as soon as that happened, that was one of those physical manifestations for us to start identifying with being physical. Because it was in the very fabric of our measurement of our consciousness on this planet. You know, we're in this time at this, you know, at this place. This is where we're at, you know, and so it sort of limited us from thinking in those higher realms.
Yeah, wow. I didn't realize the Mayan calendar was based on levels of consciousness. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I could spend a whole
Please do a masterclass for us.
Yeah, on the Mayan calendar. It's quite an interesting. I'm a 3 storm, so it wasn't when I discovered my Mayan sun sign. I went, that's why I can do what I do, because 3 is the vibration of the minor to the macro. You know, like, so I can feel vibration at its smallest aspect. And at the time when I got into it, I was just doing energy work on people. And that's why I can feel people's energy moving, you know, the cells talking to me and things like that. So
that's so cool.
In the Mayan tradition, they actually, when you were born them knowing who you were going to be or who you were, because that day signified that that's who you were going to grow into, sort of thing. So
yeah, wow. Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Please, I know you're a very busy woman, but if you feel called to, I would very happily sit and listen to all of that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Maybe I should do a meetup on it or something. If anyone's on here and wants to know anything about the Mayan calendar, put a yes in the comments, and I'll
We'll do something about it.
Yeah. Nicolette, I've got more to say, but Nicolette, I feel you want to share.
There's a couple of things that are coming up for me to share. And for me, Beyond the Five Senses relates very heavily into my own spiritual journey and energy work, because when we choose to meditate and sit in stillness and close down our access to as many of those senses as we can, and just sit with our own stillness and feel what is beyond our physical experience, that has been so huge for me to understand what my own energy state is and how it relates to the world physically, and how I relate to my spiritual being beyond my five senses. As a healer and energy worker, that is all about actually tuning out outside influence and tuning into myself and the person who I'm working with, and what their soul is speaking, and feel, like you were saying about feeling vibrations and feeling what's going on at an energetic level. And you both do that in your own ways as well when you're working with people. And I think to bring it back to a point where our listeners can relate to what Beyond the Five Senses is for them in their own experience. Like, what do you feel when you're in meditation, or what do you feel when you're energetically connecting with someone, or what do you feel when you walk into a room and you meet people and you get a different sense from each person about who they are, not physically, not from your five senses, but from the vibration that you get from them, or the energy that you get from them. Or you can learn so much about yourself and others by getting beyond the five senses, I guess.
Absolutely. And I'd love to hear also in the comments people answering Nicolette's question. But I just had the thought, when you were first waking up to that, Nicolette, what was it like for you?
It made me realize that there was so much more to my life and so much more to me than the structure that I'd been born into. And as we go through life, we're constantly getting that feedback from our outer world and receiving it through our five senses, right? We do this, we say something a certain way, that gets approved of or disapproved of by our family around us, and we mold ourselves into the reflection of our outer experience, of our family, of our friend groups, of our people who we want to accept us.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make the choice to step away from that need of acceptance and actually just feel into your own soul's calling and your own what you need to be happy and joyful, and that and you start to express that into the world, you give others permission to do the same. You give others permission to follow their light and their dreams and their because it's really scary, because our since we were born, how we are taught to be is through those five senses and through those acceptance or non-acceptance of people around us. So it's actually really frightening, and I feel that fear that I felt, like when you said when you first woke up to that. The first time I went online and started talking about my healing journey, or started talking about was leading meditations, it was terrifying because I knew that my family and my family's friends, and they were all like, "What the hell is she talking about? And what sort of a cult has she joined?" Or like, but the more we stand in our truth, the more people go, "Oh, that's, you know, that T-shirt that comes up online. That's a Nicolette thing," and that's okay.
and you know, like, because I know what it was like for me. I'd love to ask Asha the same. You know, like when you're that first moment that you recognize that you were experiencing something outside of the five senses, what was that like?
What Nicolette said just resonates at like a core level. It's really funny. Like, I remember being a kid and just having this kind of sense of other. And then, you know, I turned all my attention to the sciences. And I think, you know, that for many reasons, and one of which is, you know, I'm a massive nerd, so I've kind of got to own that part of me as well. You know, like, I'd love to say, oh, it's all society and I was indoctrinated into it. Nah, there's a thirst there, you know, so I can own that. But I always remember this kind of holding space for, you know, because these questions would come up about, you know, do you believe in spirits, and, you know, do you believe in extraterrestrial, and all these things, you know, they're common questions that are asked, you know, over the lifespan. And I remember just seeing people be really like stoic in their beliefs of, no, I don't believe that, or whatever it is, and this kind of really closed off expression of how they perceive the world. And then, you know, there's so many stories of people who have experienced more and have experienced more and have experienced more, that I just remember, you know, up until my awakening, this like holding space for, in going, well, I really don't know. And how arrogant and ignorant of me to believe that just because I haven't experienced something to date means that others haven't, or that it's not accessible or not real. And for me, it was always this point of, to believe that we are the only planet that houses life in the vastness of the universe. I was just like, just from like a purely statistical perspective, I was like, yeah, like, that's nonsensical. But anyway, I'll hold space because you know, at that point, you know, that's all I could do. But I also remember in that holding space frame of mind that I was in, going, you know what? I feel like the physical world is enough for me to wrangle with right now. So as much as I'm not discounting it, I also don't really want to go off and play in that realm right now, because I kind of feel like I've got my hands full as it is. And then, like, we know for people who awaken, generally the universe says, well, that's enough of that, and over the cliff you go. You know, so for me, the awakening felt kind of like I was on this giant slippery dip, but I couldn't feel the slippery dip beneath me, you know. So it was just this really kind of overwhelming experience of my inner world becoming more rich and vibrant than the outside world. And, you know, given that my training is in the medical model, you know, the number one theory that comes to mind is, Christ, Asha, you've lost your mind, you know, like you've, you know. And so I legitimately had to ask myself that of okay, have I gone mad? But you know, and thankfully I know the checklist kind of like off by heart, and I went through and I went, okay, well, as much as I'm having these really rich experiences, there's no other criteria to suggest that I'm mad. And even if there was, what does that actually mean? And I remember
Find the word, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I remember in one of my very first classes learning about, essentially psychosis, that based on the medical model, that, if we're having these really rich experiences, what determines psychosis versus spiritual experiences like ghosts or seeing angels or visions that are real, that are so real to you but aren't perceived by other people. And it came down to culture. What is our culture? Because in cultures, people who have this richness of experiences can be regarded as sages or, enlightened or whatever it is. And then you come across to the Western society and such
part of that community.
Yes.
And a respected part of that community that anchors people to we're okay because this person can guide us from a place that the rest of us aren't seeing.
Exactly. So when we take into account that the only difference is culture and meaning, like we said at the very beginning, and then that shapes people's experience of themselves having these experiences, that's when we can start to go, okay, well, there's so much evidence across the globe to say that there's more than our 5 senses. Whether it be through ESP, psychics who solve murder mysteries, there's so much evidence that what if we just open ourselves to allow ourselves to start experiencing the richness of what's available to us in a non-judgmental and non-fearful way? What difference would that make? So that was my journey.
I love what you said about people grab hold of, I believe that or I don't believe that. If you sit in and we've talked about the observer space before of, well, I'm not really attached to, or I'm not attached to any belief set. I'm allowing myself to experience life fully without that construct.
Yes.
I think that's one of the reasons why for me, myself, I was able to experience these things because of my innocence. I didn't have any, I think I've been an observer pretty much all my life. And Helen's put here, are we marginalizing the enlightened beings in our society? Or as Nicolette was saying, and I'll just put that up for the recording, but as saying, there used to be the the shamans or the medicine people of the community, but as we've shifted and lived through this experience, there's become more of a collective consciousness where more people are starting to tap in to that understanding, and we're breaking down those molds and stuff.
And quite often, if someone tries to put themselves in that position now, it's from an egoic.
Yeah. More and more people are tapping into the fact that it's within ourselves, right? And as I was listening to you both, I was thinking about how I actually say that my spiritual awakening was in my after my kids and when I moved up to far north Queensland. And I was very lucky because I started having all these spiritual awakenings, another state away from my family. So they didn't even know what was going on most of the time and didn't really care. And so there wasn't Facebook back then. But I remember I was listening to you ladies and I was going, it's really interesting because I think I've always had it, but there was this definite waking up. But my first ever physical experience was before I had kids, and I'd actually gone to a new age shop, which in those days was down alleys. Like there was no spiritual books in hammocks or whatever the bookshops. You just couldn't get spiritual books anywhere, and they had like a spiritual awakening or something like that, like beginners thing, and it was in my hometown, and me and a girlfriend from school went to it, right? And it was just after school, so I must have been maybe about 18 or something. And as you were talking, I just remembered, because we were standing out the front of waiting for these two women to open up, and one of their sons turned up, and he had just hitchhiked down from Cairns. So it was my first, I didn't even know where Cairns was, right? So it was my first like seed of information about Cairns. I ended up there for 17 years, right? But before he left, they actually said, oh, do you want to come and do the meditation with us? And so they took us through this meditation. And at the end, we all had to share what we did. And I'd gone through this rainforest, and I was, found this big lake, this beautiful big lake, and there was this big rock. And so I went on this rock and I jumped in and I swam in the water. And as I got up, I felt in the meditation someone's watching me. So I got out of the water and I climbed up a tree, and I watched this person walk underneath and behind, like through the path. Well, as we're talking the story, right, the guy that turns from Cairns, he's talking first, and he starts sharing this. He's been in this forest and blah blah blah, and he said, and then I saw this woman, and she jumped into this lake, and I'm listening and going, no, like seriously. And then he said, and so I went over to find her, and I couldn't find her. And before I could say anything, I went, it's because I went up a tree. And it was just like this, like, oh my gosh, can this actually be real? And he shared the same, like we were in the same space, wherever that space was, we were in the same space. And I was I must have been about 18.
Oh, wow.
At the time.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Cool.
And I'm a little envious, because my awakening to that world was only 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But like a babe in the woods compared to.
Yeah, but you know what? Like the collective consciousness, the level of information gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Yeah. And so, mine might have taken me a long time, but you've got access, like bang, it just drops in. You know what I mean?
And I think a really great example for people listening of when this happens for you is like when you're in conversation and you're all talking, and you say something and someone else says, oh, I was about to say that, like the exact words or the exact, because if you're tapped in, then you're connected with each other on a level that is not physical, it's energetic.
Yeah.
And so the proof of that can come out of your mouth, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And definitely that's happened. Like I more and more and more, if I think of someone, like on the weekend, 2 different people I thought of, and within minutes they're ringing. Haven't spoken to them for months and months.
Yep.
Like, and you just sort of get used to it, right? Like it's just part of what's happening. And can I just share also, I know we've gone over a little bit, but on the weekend I did some movie binging and I watched a movie called Winter's Tale. Have either of you seen it? Oh my gosh, it's such an amazing, beautiful movie. Winter's Tale, you should really watch it. And there's like, the whole thing is like, you can watch it from this third dimensional place where it's just, a guy that needs some help, and these bad guys after him and blah, blah, blah. And then there's all these different layers through it where it's actually the guys, you know, a henchman for the devil, and you know, like, and there's his judge and blah blah blah, you know, and there's all this stuff in it, but you can actually see all these levels in it, and it's it really helped me to remember to wake up, you know, like, yes, we've got some crazy stuff going on in the world at the moment, and wake up to those higher realms. What are we here for? What are we doing? Tune into them. And I had another moment also where I recognized that the last house I was in, I'd connected in and asked if I could do healing on that earth with the Indigenous there, and they'd said yes. And I recognized on the weekend I hadn't done that yet here, and so I did, and it shifted a whole heap of stuff for me, you know, like asking permission and connecting in with the custodians of the land here, and I could feel this, like, oh, being up in the realms so much, it's so nice to reconnect with the earth space as well. So
yeah, awesome.
Some beautiful things to play with or to be present to when you're working, not just in the five senses. There's so much more. I really do feel sad for people that only connect in with their five senses. You know, no wonder there's so much sadness and depression on the earth when you don't recognize that there's so much more open to you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's also just kind of worthwhile noting that as much as, you know, for the three of us, the awakening, so to speak, was like, it was almost like an inevitability, or we get dropped in it, or that kind of thing. It doesn't, you know, exploring and expanding into this space doesn't necessarily have to feel like or be the slippery dip adventure. You know, like you can do this in a really guided, you know, very safe way, because these practices are safe, you know, and it's really important that people understand that as well, that, you know, meditative practices, you know, there's such powerful healing modalities, and they're also backed by science as well, for people that, you know, need that assurity and sense of certainty and going, well, what is this? And it's not something that necessarily has to happen to you, or you're waiting for that divine time of this is my time. If you feel that sense of knocking at your consciousness of what else and what can I open up to, you know, like you two beautiful ladies, you know, I also teach meditative practices, you know, like there are guides that have, you know, gained mastery over these things that can step you through in a way that feels safe and enlightening and expanding. So, you know, you can be, you know, at the helm of the pace of your own journey too.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I, like, you know, for me, I was on this journey with no help and support, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I did have to check my checklist of like, what's going on? You know, like,
good. So I'm not the only one.
Yeah, that's right. And so I do definitely agree with you, Asha, that especially these days, you know, as soon as you recognize that you can have whatever experience you choose, you know, like we're making it up. Like, I'm not joking, we're making it up. And so, you know, once you recognize that, you can choose whatever choice you want in that situation. But I also definitely recognize the importance of having some sort of mentor or someone to facilitate and guide you through the process, you know, like, so that you can ask questions and get an idea of, you know, where to go and if you want to accelerate, how do you accelerate, and all those sort of things. So there's a lot out there at the moment, and you can go down the rabbit hole if you don't reach out to people. So I agree. Well done. Well, ladies, I think we've gone over time.
Over.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We had a really beautiful on the weekend. I saw someone comment on one of our must have been last week's, and said how much they love listening to us three. And they actually said earth, air, and water. I think it was water.
That's
And
so
apparently I'm
beautiful.
air. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought I was grounded.
Am I the earth?
I would say maybe she
Wow.
didn't say. I just asked what her interpretation of me was, and she said I was the air. So
Yeah.
yeah, so very interesting. But
I feel
I love that so many women get a lot out of this and watch the replays and everything. So thank you, everyone, and lovely to have you both on again. And we will catch up next week. Yeah,
We will.
sounds great.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Lady.
everyone. See ya.